You've been told over and over that keeping 6 months of cash in a traditional bank is the height of financial responsibility. You look at that balance and you feel secure. It feels disciplined, it feels adult, it feels safe. But that feeling can be misleading. One of the biggest traps in personal finance is that our brains confuse a familiar number with real security. In behavioral economics, Richard Thaler's work on mental accounting explains that people mentally separate money into different buckets: savings, emergency fund, vacation money, house down payment, and that changes how they evaluate it. Once money is labeled savings or emergency fund, we often stop questioning whether it is actually growing in real terms, even if prices around us are rising. What I want to show you today is simple. Cash that feels safe can still lose value quietly, not in a dramatic crash, not in one bad day, but in slow motion, month after month, while you think you are protecting yourself. That hidden loss is not about your account balance changing, it is about what that balance can actually buy, shrinking over time. This is where the psychology gets really interesting. We do not make money decisions like perfect calculators. We make them like human beings, with memory, fear, and habits. Kahneman and Tversky's prospect theory explains that people evaluate outcomes relative to a reference point, not just by their absolute value. Their research also shows that losses feel much heavier than gains of the same size, with losses often felt about twice as strongly as gains. That is why moving money out of a savings account can feel emotionally dangerous, even when the data says it is stagnant. Your brain sees cash untouched and reads it as safety. The account balance is a number you can see, a number that has not gone down. But in the background, inflation is quietly eroding what that number can buy. Your future self may be paying the cost of that emotional comfort without you even noticing. So the real question is not, is my money still there? The real question is my money still able to buy what I need later? That gap between perceived safety and real purchasing power is exactly where many people get stuck in what looks like responsible behavior but actually underperforms. Let's put a number on this. Inflation is simply the general rise in the overall price level of goods and services over time. The Federal Reserve defines it that way very clearly. In March 2026, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, CPIU, rose 3.3% over the previous 12 months. That matters because money sitting in cash has to overcome the rise in prices just to hold its ground. If your cash earns less than inflation, your purchasing power is shrinking even though the balance number looks unchanged. That is the illusion. The account looks stable, but the real value is leaking out. And right now, even short-term government rates are only around the same neighborhood. The Fed's H.15 data and other market trackers show that 3-month Treasury bills are yielding roughly 3.6% on April 27, 2026, while 4-week bills are around 3.6% as well. Treasury Direct explains that Treasury bills are sold for terms ranging from 4 weeks to 52 weeks, and they are typically sold at a discount or at par, which means you essentially earn that yield over the term. If your savings account is paying, say, 0.5% to 1.5% while inflation is running at 3.3%, you are effectively losing ground every year. That gap may feel small each month, but over 5 or 10 years, it compounds into a significant erosion of your lifestyle capacity. There is another reason people overkeep cash. It feels controllable. Cash is visible. Cash is immediate. Cash gives you the feeling that you can solve a problem today without asking anyone for permission. You do not need to liquidate investments, wait for a fund to settle, or navigate a selling process. You can transfer, withdraw, or pay in seconds. That is why many people prefer to leave money in a bank account even when the return is weak. It is not because they are careless, it is because certainty feels calming. Prospect theory helps explain that emotional bias. People often choose the sure outcome over the better expected outcome when uncertainty is involved. But certainty has a price. A safe asset that loses purchasing power every year can become unsafe in a different way. It does not crash loudly, it erodes quietly. Over time, you may find that the same amount of money buys you a smaller apartment, a less powerful car, or a tighter retirement budget. That slow erosion is not news. It is just a background tax that most people never explicitly calculate. For people who lived through repeated economic shocks, layoffs, market drops, housing crashes, and institutional disappointment, holding cash can feel like common sense. It is a defense mechanism. It is the financial version of keeping your hand near the exit door, ready to react if something goes wrong. That instinct is understandable. But defensive habits can become expensive when they are built for a past economy. In a world where prices change, yields change, and financial tools have multiplied, The old idea that cash in the bank equals security is only half true. If you are still optimizing for the 1970s or even the 2008 crisis, you may be underpreparing for the 2026 to 2030 environment. The SEC notes that money market funds were developed precisely as an option that generally provided higher returns than interest-bearing bank accounts, while still maintaining a relatively low level of risk. Today, those funds hold more than $2.9 trillion in assets, showing that people have long searched for a middle ground between dead cash and full market risk. That demand is a signal. The market is responding to the need for liquidity that doesn't quietly bleed away. The goal is not to become reckless. The goal is to stop treating every dollar of emergency money the same way. A better model is to think in layers. Layer 1, immediate cash. Keep enough in a regular savings or checking account for true short-term friction. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, bills you must pay, or income gaps you can't predict. This is the put fire out layer. Life happens money, job loss buffer money, medical emergency money. Layer 2. Short-term liquid reserves. Place the rest of your liquid reserves in instruments that are still accessible but less vulnerable to inflation drag than plain idle cash. Treasury bills are one example of a short-term US government instrument, and money market funds are another commonly used cash management vehicle. That is the mindset shift. Not how much cash can I hide, but how much liquidity do I actually need, and what is the smartest place for the rest? You are not abandoning safety. You are upgrading your definition of it from motionless to functional. Real safety is not just that the money is there, but that it can still do what you need years from now. Stop measuring safety by the size of the balance alone. Start measuring safety by purchasing power. A savings account that cannot keep up with inflation is not a fortress. It is a slow leak. It looks solid from the outside, but over time it hollows out your future lifestyle. The point is not to chase returns blindly. The point is to stop confusing stillness with protection. Real wealth logic begins when you understand that money is not only about what you have today, it is about what it will still be able to do for you tomorrow. Whether that is retiring comfortably, buying a home, traveling, or supporting your family. If this changed the way you think about cash, the next step is simple. Audit your emergency money and separate. True near-term cash, the next 1 to 3 months of essential bills and emergencies. Longer-term liquid reserves, the next 3 to 12 months or more that do not need to be tapped immediately. Ask for each layer. Is this money too liquid, or is it just stuck? Is this bucket earning more than inflation, or am I paying a quiet inflation tax by leaving it below? Explore vehicles that still feel safe to you, like treasury bills, short-term bond funds, or money market funds, that can help your liquid reserves keep pace instead of trailing behind. When you start thinking in layers of liquidity, not just more cash or less cash, you stop falling into the trap of trading perceived safety for real decline. You turn your emergency money from a slowly sinking anchor into a genuine, flexible foundation for your future.